Hello everybody. My name is Sarah Dayan. If you were there yesterday at DevCon, you probably saw my talk on developer experience. But today is another day, and we're going to talk about something else. I am a software engineer in the front-end experiences team at Algolia. So we make sure that you have everything you need to build beautiful search and discovery experiences in your websites, in your mobile application, in your native application, desktop, whatever, anything, we cover you. So today we are going to do a live code, and we are going to integrate Algolia and all search and discovery features in a Next.js storefront. So before we go into it, let's see basically what we're going to build. So this is the site that we're going to create. So here we have a Next.js storefront that you can shop on it, and you can see that you have pretty cool stuff. You have this nice looking autocomplete, and you can see that I click in it and already it opens. I can type iPhone and I get some query suggestions, some recent searches. That's pretty nice. And then I can move on and go to the search page, right? And I see all my beautiful products. I can filter on, brand, but also color, on price, on whatever. And also, because that's nice for search, but also you have some discovery here with trending products. So it's not all about search. It's also about, surfacing the right kind of content. And this is what trending products and all in all, Algolia Recommend provides you, surfacing the right content for the right users at the right time. So before we start coding, just want to give a shout out to Backmarket. Backmarket is an Algolia customer, and they were kind enough to lend us their data set. All that data is Backmarket data. And we are only authorized to use it for this demo, so it will not be available for anybody to use after that. This is only for the demo. But just, yes, a big shout out to Backmarket. If you want to check what they do, backmarket.com. That's a pretty cool website. Yeah, just check them out. They're really awesome. We love you, Backmarket. Thank you for the data set. All right, let's get started. So thank you, Dayan. I share that you shared the repository of the demo in the chat. That's really great. So you will see basically everything that you will see, you can have access to it either right now if you want to code as we speak, or you can check it out after. So this is what the final results looks like, but we are not there yet. We are there right now. Oh, yes, I need to start my project. Obviously, we're doing it live. All right, so this is what we have. This is the site that we have in production. It's a storefront with Next.js, and it works. It has categories. It has all that. But as you can see, we don't have search. We don't have an autocomplete. We don't have a search page. We don't have a nice trending items panel. We need to build that ourselves. So the first thing that you need to have is a data set. Fortunately, we have it in Algolia. We have our indices. We have query suggestions. We have an index of query suggestions. We have an index of products. We have all that we need. So now that we have that, all the data is already here in Algolia, and you can check the docs if you want, if you need to do that with your own data set. Now we are going to set up our storefront so it can communicate with Algolia. So the first thing that you will want to do is to grab the credentials. Grab some credentials so you can properly communicate with Algolia. I'm going to go in my content file, right? And I'm going to generate some code. Yes, we'll generate code today. I'm not going to type character by character. We don't have time, and I'm too scared for that. So first thing we need is credentials. So as you can see, we have an app ID. This is the identifier for our application. We have a search API key, which allows us to basically authenticate from the front end. So this is only for search. And then we have the information for our indices. So we have the products here. We have the one for suggestions, which is going to be really useful for the autocomplete. And you have some other indices here that we will talk about in a few minutes. So now that we have that, we need to instantiate our search client. So a search client, the thing is that Algolia is a REST API, but you don't want to directly mess with the REST API because it could be unavailable, like maybe one of the servers of your cluster is down. You want to have some nice features, and that's what the search client provides. So when you use the search client of Algolia, and that's not the right code, search client, when you use, so basically it's a dependency called Algolia Search that you can grab from NPM. You get the app ID search API key, you instantiate it, and you have the search client. And so there are many great features about the search client, but the two main ones that I really want to talk about are the caching and the retry strategy. The caching is really nice because when you type several times the same query, you type iPhone, you go back, and because Algolia is as you type, every character is going to be triggering a search request. If you go back, instead of hitting Algolia right away, it's going to check in the cache. So it's going to save you some search requests. The retry strategy is really nice because your Algolia data is stored on servers, and those servers are part of a cluster of 3 servers. If one server is down and you query the REST API directly, basically you're going to get an error back because the server is unavailable. With the search client, you will get the retry strategy. So if the search client gets an error, it's going to try on a different node. So for your users, it's going to be purely transparent. All right, we have the search client. So time to integrate some autocompletion. So autocomplete basically is this experience that you have here. It's a search box with completion that's going to be everywhere in your application, allowing people to search from everywhere in the app and controlling the entire search experience. So we are going to do this with autocomplete. This is a library from Algolia called Autocomplete. And while it does not have a React integration, it has a vanilla JavaScript with virtual DOM integration available. So we are going to create a thin wrapper around that so we can use it as a React component. All right, so let's do it. We are going to open our autocomplete file. This is where we are going to create that integration. And let's generate the code, and then we'll see what it's all about. All right, so a lot of things are happening here. We can fold that. We don't need that. So basically, that's a simple component, right? We have an autocomplete component. It gets options, and those options are actually forwarded directly to the autocomplete function. We are setting a bunch of these options ourselves, and basically the goal of that is really to bind autocomplete and the elements, the DOM element, virtual DOM elements that it's going to generate, bind that to refs that then we're going to attach to a div. And then we're going to return that div. So that div is going to be already binded with autocomplete. Is it better right now? Oh, yes. I think it's better. Tell me if it's better or not. I can zoom in a little bit more if you want. Well, you'll tell me. Okay, so now that we have our autocomplete component, we can actually use that and add it to our header. So I'm going to open my layout. So I have a global layout right now, right? And this layout, let's close a bunch of things. We have a header here. And I actually added a little comment here to decide where to display the autocomplete. So if I type hello, you can see that it shows here, right? Awesome. So let's use our autocomplete component that we just created right here. All right. So what is going on? As you can see, we already have something here. So that's pretty nice. So what we have here, the first thing is that we have an option called Open on Focus. So Open on Focus basically makes sure that when you click in the autocomplete, you don't have to type something for it to open. It's going to open right away if there are results. And that's an option that I like to set up personally because I think in terms of UX, it's a lot better that you always get feedback whenever you do something. Clicking is an action. So you want to give users a feedback of, yes, there is something, and now you can start typing. Now we have detached media query. which takes a media query, which basically tells autocomplete when to turn into detached mode. Detached mode in autocomplete is a mode that allows you to have your search experience look really great, looks really close to a native experience when you are on mobile. When we're done building the autocomplete, I will show you what it looks like. And then we have the class names API, because we're using Tailwind CSS right now. So you can pass down any class name that you want to any element, and it's going to look great. All right, so right now our autocomplete looks nice, but nothing really happens. And that's normal. That's because we did not add anything to it yet. Like there is no sources, we did not pass the search client or anything. So we need to do that. So the first thing that we want to do is to add query suggestions. If you don't know what query suggestion is, let's go to Amazon, because I think it showcases pretty cool examples. Let's say I will type Samsung, for example, and let's refresh, because sometimes Amazon doesn't work well. All right, so I type Samsung, and Amazon gives me a bunch of suggestions of queries, right? And you can have that with Algolia with our query suggestions feature. But you don't have to think about that yourself. You don't have to build it yourself. You can actually use the plugin that we created called Query Suggestions plugin. At Algolia, we have plugins for everything. Apple has apps, we have plugins. So we're going to use the Query Suggestions plugin to basically generate suggestion of queries in our autocomplete. So let's do that. We're going to instantiate it in our component. So we're going to do it in the component because I need access to the router. You will see why later. So basically, we need to do right. And there we go. We have the instantiation of our plugin. So what's important to see here is this part. So this comes from the autocomplete library. So we are creating the plugin. We're passing the search client that we created earlier. We are passing an index name. And then we have this API called transform source. Because by default, all the plugins, autocomplete, everything, they have a default rendering, they have default settings, but you are able to change that if you need to. You are able to customize that. And so, for example, you can customize the item URL. You will see what it's used for later. And you can customize the templates. Right now, we're just stringifying the item, so you will see what it looks like, but that's basically the idea. And I'm using a lazy ref, which is a custom hook that I created so that it's stored in a ref, so it doesn't change, and it's only instantiated once. You can check the repo if you want to see the implementation of that. Think of it as a use memo, but better, because that's what it's actually here for. All right, so now that I have this function, should be zoomed better right now, I can go in my autocomplete component. I will use the plugins option, and I pass an array, and I execute this. All right, let's refresh to make sure it works. And now if I click, you see that there is stuff in my autocomplete. It looks really awful right now. I agree, I give you that, but at least you have something. And if I type stuff, like things are moving, so you can see that it actually reacts. So now what we want to do is really make it look a lot better. Like that's really not amazing right now. So we are going to create a custom component to render those items and make them look a lot better. So I have a file called autocomplete item ready, and we are going to generate the code for that. All right. So that's a lot of code. We'll see everything about it right now. So autocomplete item is really just a presentational item. It takes children, so you can pass anything inside of it. It takes an icon. It takes actions, which are going to be basically those buttons that you see here. But it also takes the router. So the router, I won't go too deep into that, but the way that we currently render autocomplete makes it go out of the context of Next. And we need the context of Next, the router context, to be able to use links, those Next.js links. So this is why I need to have access to the router and actually instantiate my plugin inside the component and not outside. All right, so now that we have that, we're going to be able to actually use that in our plugin. So let's go back here, and instead of returning this, I'm going to do this. And of course, we're doing it live. Damn it. Right. Okay, let's do it slowly. Boom, much better. It got really hot in here for a second. All right, so we are using our autocomplete item. So you can see that we're passing the router. We're passing an href, which is going to be the link that you go to when you click on the element. We're passing an icon. We're passing actions, which are going to be those buttons that you see. And so you see now that we're using a bunch of interesting things. We're using the onTapAhead function that transform source gives us, which basically gives you this icon here that allows you to basically fill the autocomplete with. And we're also using the reverse highlight component. So you have components here, and they give you access to pre-made components. So let's see what reverse highlight is. So now we are back here, and see you have your query suggestions. But if I type iPhone, instead of highlighting the part that is the same, we're highlighting the part that is different. And this is really important when you're doing an autocomplete, because the goal of an autocomplete like that, and mostly on mobile, is really to save you keystrokes. You want to be able to see what you're looking for and pre-fill it with your tap ahead icon. And so by highlighting the difference, you can actually focus on what you're actually looking for. Right now, I know that I want an iPhone. I don't need to highlight iPhone. I need to highlight, oh, is it a 11, a 12, a 7, or what, a XR, 8, 14, 17, 20, whatever. So this is why we are using reverse highlight. So that's pretty cool. We have those elements. By the way, they work with the keyboard. Right now, I'm using the keyboard and not my mouse. So that's pretty nice. All right. First step is here. Now we want to move on to recent searches. So let's go back on Amazon just to see what it's all about. When you're on Amazon and you click here, you see all the stuff that you've searched for in the past. USB cable, iPhone, phone mount for car. Those are things that I looked for in the past. And you know, sometimes you're looking for something and then you get interrupted. And so you have to stop. And then you want to go back and you don't remember what you typed. Well, this is why you have recent searches. So you can start back from where you were. Okay, do you need to do that yourself? Of course you don't, because we have a plugin for that. It's called recent searches, and recent searches will allow you to save anything that you type in your local storage. You can plug it with a database if you want and display them in your autocomplete. So that's pretty cool. Let's create the plugin for that. So we're going to fold that and we're going to do. All right. So we have our recent searches plugin. So same thing, create local storage recent searches plugin. It's like it's a Java project. We have a key. So this is where it's going to be saved in the local storage. We have a limit of how many we want to show. So we can save more, but we're only going to show 5 of them. So you don't have a huge list of recent searches. And then again, the transform source API, we have access to onTapAhead, on remove. So you can remove anything that you don't want to display, right? And the templates again. So let's add that in the autocomplete. Let's go here. We're going to show it first right before the QS, query suggestions. That's an insider acronym. And now if I click here, you can see that I have stuff that I already saved in my local storage. So I have my recent searches items. Now that's pretty nice, but I want to have a better template. I can reuse my autocomplete item for that. So let's go in here. We're going to remove that part. Go and it actually did something really weird. That's not what I wanted to do. All right, so that's try to remember all that yourself. You'll see how hard it is. All right, so we have the item. We can pass the router again. We can pass an href, an icon, the actions. This time I'm passing 2 of them. I'm passing a remove one, and I'm passing a fill one. And so now, if I go here and I click, you can see that I have all those suggestions that I looked for in the past. I can pre-fill them, but I can also trash them, right? And I have a bunch of them. And so now if I type something like, I don't know, iPhone, enter, clear it, it's going to be here in my recent searches. That's pretty nice. Now, the problem with this autocomplete right now, like it looks really good. It looks pretty nice. But what we wanted to do is to really navigate to a search page. And right now, it doesn't know how to do that, right? What we want is to basically, we're here and we go to iPhone 7 and it moves to the search page. So it will actually do it. But if you notice, like, let's go to Samsung, for example, you can see that you had a page refresh here, right? And we don't want that. We're in Next.js. We have client-side routing. So we want to do that with the APIs of Next.js, right? So we are going to add the navigator. Let's add the navigator. And I love that name. It really sounds like something really strong, like the navigator. All right, demo AC navigator to add the API. So the navigator is basically an option. This option takes an object which exposes a navigate method that you can implement, and it will expose the item URL of the element that you just selected. And this is why here in the item, in the plugin here, we have get item URL. This URL that we've defined here, which is basically where we want to travel to, is going to be given to the navigator, to the navigate function. And so here you can say, you can tell autocomplete what to do when it's time to navigate. By default, we use window location, but right now we want to use the router from Next.js and just push that item URL. So now, if I do this, and I select Samsung, I directly go to Samsung without having anything like any page refresh. And you can see that everything is persisted here. Okay, another thing that we need to do is to tell autocomplete what to do on submit, because sometimes you select an element like that, but sometimes you just type something and you submit. For example, if you do Google and you don't select anything, you just enter, what should happen? Well, you should also navigate to the right page. But right now, it doesn't do that because you could decide to do anything else with an autocomplete. You could decide to do a comment palette, and that would be a very different behavior. Maybe you would save into some place. You would not necessarily navigate, right? So you need to tell autocomplete how to handle the submission of the form. So let's do this. It's a simple option. You guess what it is? On submit, obviously. On submit gives you access to the state of autocomplete. And so in our case, we can say basically the same as we have here, router push, and go to the search page with the query state.query. So now when we do that, I can do Google again, and it will do the same. And you can see that I have my query parameter here in query. All right, so someone tried to get in. All right, so that's pretty nice. And as you can see, we are persisting the query in the URL. This is a really good practice that you want to enable, because then you're able to derive everything, like everything from your search, the query, the refinements. You can derive that from the URL, allowing you to share a URL to someone, and they will see exactly the same thing, the same search state. So that's pretty nice. But right now, there is one last part missing before we move on to the search page, is that when I type Google here, see I have query Google here, but it's not here. It's not in my autocomplete. And to do that, what I need to do is to give autocomplete an initial state. I need to say to autocomplete, here's your initial query, and derive it from the URL. Again, that's pretty simple. Go here, and you have an initial state, which is an object that takes a partial state, and you can give it a query, and you can use the router. So on router, you have a dot query. So that dot query is basically everything after the question mark, and then dot query. Technically, a query parameter can be a string or an array of strings, but right now we're going to say that it's just a string. And here you can see that what it just did is that Google is now persisted in here. So that's pretty nice. We're really happy about that. Now we have our autocomplete. We can use it for recent searches, for query suggestions, Nintendo, whatever, navigate to the search page. And now we can have a great search page that we're going to build together to actually display products. But before we go into that, maybe, Daya, there are some questions that you would like to ask live. Anything?
Well, I think everything has been asked on the chat.
All right.
And yeah, they really like your snippet solution.
Yeah, so this is Raycast. You should, if you're not using Raycast, you need to, please don't stop the live, don't stop the streaming. Please go on the Raycast website, do yourself a favor, download that, install that. This is the best app ever. Shout out to Raycast. We love them, and I love them right now. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to go to my cheat sheet. We are going to build a search page. So just to remind you, this is what it looks like. We have all that to build. I need to build all that in the time slot that I defined. That's going to be a fun one. Let's do it. So yeah, the library that we're going to use to build this search page is InstantSearch, and more precisely, React InstantSearch Hooks. We just released React InstantSearch Hooks not that long ago, but InstantSearch has been there for many, many years. It's a great library, very robust library, allowing you to really create a widget-based search and discovery experience. Basically, just using widgets, very declarative, very HTML-like. So that's pretty nice. This is what we're going to build right now together. So let's close a bunch of those things. Like, this is in my way. All right, so we're going to open the search page. Let's close all that. And basically, this search page is nothing right now. We have a head just for the title, and that's it. Nothing is in the page. Everything else is the layout. So we are starting from a blank state. First thing that you will want to do is to instantiate InstantSearch. This is going to be the provider of your entire application. Everything that you put inside the widgets, they need to be wrapped in InstantSearch so that it can inherit everything, like all the settings, all search client, all that. So let's do this. All right. So InstantSearch, we have a component called InstantSearch. It created some space just because I have some divs with some padding inside. Let's wrap. Let's word wrap so you can see better. Okay, so we are passing the search client. It's the same one as we are using for autocomplete. So the bonus thing is that we are sharing the cache. And since we are in a Next.js application, no page refreshes, so everything is in memory. That's great. Passing the index name, again, it's the same. Now, it doesn't show anything. That's normal. We did not pass any widgets, but we're going to do it in a second. So the first thing that we want to display is obviously the hits. We want to show products, right? So let's do that. We're going to use a widget called Infinite Hits. What I love about Infinite Hits is that instead of having a pagination at the bottom, you will have a button to load more. So you click and it loads more. And that's much better when you are on a mobile experience, right? Because you really don't want to fiddle with buttons. You just want to click on a big button, load more things, a lot more user-friendly. Okay, let's do this. All right. And no, this was not this one. It is this one. Okay, Infinite Hits. So you can see that we have hits. We actually have hits here on the page. They look really ugly, but they're here. So the API right now is pretty simple. We have the class names. We're passing a bunch of class names. And we have a show previous option set to true, meaning that let's say you share the page, but we're already on page 3 or 4. We're not going to show you the entire thing. That would be a lot to load, but you will have a show previous results at the top. That's a pretty nice option to set up. All right, we're good. It works. But now we want to see like a better hit component, right? That doesn't really look great. So we're going to create a component to display those things. So let's go to, I have a hit component file, and we're going to generate the code for it. Let's close all that. Not really useful. Okay, so it's basically a component, like just a simple React component, which receives an object with a hit inside. And then we are using an image from Next.js to display like anything that you have in your hit. So the image, the title, we have a highlight component here that will highlight the matches, right? We're formatting the price. This is a custom utility function. Anything that we need, so you can customize that to everything that you need. And after you did that, you can just pass it here with hit component, and you pass your hit component, boom, and it's going to look much, much better. Okay, it looks good, but there are many things that are not working right now. So bear with me. We know it doesn't work the way you want, but it is coming. All right, so first thing that I see personally is that because we are using a 3-column grid, the 20 default items, like they don't look good. Like we have 2 here. Well, what is this? I want to have less items, and I want them to have like a multiple of 3. So we are going to tell Algolia, please give us only 9 items at a time. To do that, you can actually use a configure widget that is renderless. Configure does not render anything, but it allows you to pass some search parameters, usually static, to Algolia. And so right now, we're only showing 9 elements at a time, and then I can load more if I want. That's pretty cool. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do, because you might have realized that we have query Nintendo here, but the results, they don't match. It has nothing to do with Nintendo. And that's because right now, Autocomplete and React InstantSearch Hooks, they're not linked together. We did not link them together. But instead of doing that in a dirty way, we are going to derive it from the query. So we are going to leverage the routing functionality of InstantSearch to derive its state from the URL. So let's do that. It is simply something that you add on the InstantSearch component. All right, so this is basically here we have an option called routing. We are using a state mapping from InstantSearch.js that basically allows you, when you will refine on your search, to have a clean URL. We're passing the current index, and now we have routing enabled. Still doesn't work. It's normal. Right now, we cannot refine from here, so you cannot see here. But one thing that we don't have here is, again, the query doesn't match here. And this is because in InstantSearch, basically, whenever you add a widget, this is a declarative way to interact with Algolia. And right now, there is no query. Algolia does not understand that there is a query. So what we need to have is a search box. But we already have a search box here. We don't need another search box. But we do need to have a search box in InstantSearch to say, hey, here's the query, take that query into account. So what you can do instead is create what we call a virtual search box. A virtual search box is a component that has all the functionalities from a search box, but does not render anything. And we are going to use the hooks from React InstantSearch Hooks to do that. So let's do it here. We're going to create the virtual search box. This is a plain component that uses the use search box hook and returns nothing. And so now I can instantiate that. I can add that to my application. Boom. And now we have it. We have the query that match the results. That's pretty cool. Now, whenever I type something, I type Nintendo, but I could do iPhone, I will have iPhones. If I do, I don't know, whatever, Google, I will have Google stuff. And you can see that pretty cool highlighting here. I love it. I think it looks great, and I love purple. All right, so that's cool. We have results, but the problem is that results are not enough. For me, it's not enough. When you have search, you don't want to only do query stuff, right? I almost said a bad word. You don't only want to do query and then it returns results. You also want to interact with it in more like in a richer way. For example, you could say, oh, I want a smartphone, right? But then you want to filter it by brands, and you want to filter it by price, and you want to filter it by color or anything like that, right? So to do that, what you can do is add filters. If you remember, this is what we have here. So we have categories, we have brands, we have colors, we have price, a bunch of different things. So this is what we are going to create right now. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a component to wrap our filters, because we want to have one for desktop and one for mobile. And so we're going to have them, we are going to have two of them in the app, but displaying it in a different way. So I'm going to create my filters component. So it's going to take a type to basically tell it show as a list, show as disclosure. And inside of this, we are going to add our filters. Okay, so the first filter that we're going to add is the categories. So let's add it and then we can talk about it. First one is going to be not this one. Right, and it doesn't work. Raycast does not always work the way I want. Okay. That's better. So we have filter. This filter has nothing to do with instant search. That's really just a presentational component that we created earlier. What you want to look at is this widget. This comes from React InstantSearch Hooks. This is a hierarchical menu. Try to say that fast 3 times. Hierarchical menu, hierarchical menu, hierarchical menu. Yes, I win. I want a bounty. All right. So we are passing class names again. We are passing also some attributes. We have the attributes from Algolia that we want to display. And we have a limit of how many items that we want to show. Let's see what it looks like. I'm going to add it here. So we can do this. So we have an aside, right? And we have our filters, right? So now we are on telephones. Let's go back on iPhone. We're going to have more stuff to show. So here you can see we have telephones, for example. And when I click, you have some hierarchies right under it. So I can say telephone, accessories, and I'm going to only have accessories for iPhone phones. So that's pretty nice. That's pretty cool. Let's add some more filters. So right now we can filter on categories, but maybe we want to go a little bit further. We want to do by brand. So if you type phone, for example, you could say, I want a phone, or you want a laptop, and maybe it's okay for you to have either an Apple phone or a Samsung phone. So you want to filter by brand. Let's add a brand filter. So let's go here. All right. So we just added a filter on brands. And we're not using a hierarchical menu. We're using a refinement list. The API is pretty similar. Again, we have a bunch of class names. Thank you, Tailwind. An attribute which matches the attribute from your data set, and a limit. And right now, I'm on phone, but I could say I only want Apple phone, or I want Honeywell stuff, right? So that's pretty nice. Now I can filter on brand. Now, there is another thing that I would really like to show you is how to create this beautiful color refinement list, because I think it looks pretty nice. Sometimes, you want to filter on a black phone or a gold phone, and we could do it with a refinement list. Like let's copy what we just created here. We can just copy it here. We call it color Here we use, so it's color hex, if my memory is right. And it looks like this. So it works, but it looks like hell, right? Because right now, first, you don't see colors, and that sucks. But also the label looks pretty weird. And that's because, so those are Algolia facets. And in Algolia facets, you're not able to pass like a label this, color that. It's just a string, which matches the string that you have in your data set. So this is a trick that we came up with where we store more information than necessary to display, right? We store the label, but also the color. And then we're going to, manipulate that on the front end to show it the way we want. So to do that, we're going to create a color refinement component using the use refinement list hook, and we're going to customize the UI. Let's do that right now. So let's go in color refinement list, and we're going to generate this component. All right, a lot of things. Don't freak out. I'm going to explain everything. Let's close the return statement. So basically, the API of this is going to be exactly the same as a refinement list. You have the same options. We destructured them here because we also want to be able to pass props for the rendering. But what we are doing, which is the most important thing, we're using use refinement list from React InstantSearch Hooks. We're passing the attributes that were passed to the props that were passed to the components, right? And we're getting APIs in return. Can refine items, refine everything we need to create this component. And then we're building the component the way we want. So for example, here, I'm going to iterate on the items. And then I have this utility that I created, extract coral facet. So from the facet, we're going to split on this semicolon here to get the label and the color. And then with this, I'm able to generate a swatch element, which will take either the color, if it's a color, an X color, or a background, right? So that's pretty nice. Now that we have that component, let's use it. So we are going to change this. We're going to remove that, actually. And now we are using our color refinement list. And does it look dashing? Look, you check that, and you have this nice little check mark here. Check the white, and it's black on white. That looks pretty cool. Thank you to the mix blend difference class in Tailwind. That's what powers that. It looks pretty nice. All right. We could also add one for price, by the way. We were just right now doing refinements, but you could do one on price if you wanted to. So that's going to be quite simple. You can use a range input that's going to basically, based on the current refinements that you have, give you the lowest and highest price. And then you can say, no, I only want up to up to $100, right? So that's pretty nice. That's pretty cool. All right. So now that we have all those filters, you may notice that if we resize, if we go on the mobile size, we cannot show it. We want to show a lot of the items, but we don't see the filters. And right now, this button doesn't work. We want to show the filters on mobile in a nice way. So what we're going to do is we're going to add them in a panel that slides from the side. So let's do that. Let's go back. Maybe where do we want to output that? Maybe here. Yeah, that might be nice. Okay. Right. So now, as you can see, what I generated is a dialog. So this comes from Tailwind UI. It's a presentational component. And inside of it, what's really important is this part. We are using the same filters component that we use lower with a type disclosure, making it look different on mobile. And so right now, if I go here, I resize, I click, and I have my nice filters in a disclosure state. And I can filter on Apple, I can filter on color, and then when I go back, it's filtered. Look at that. That looks pretty nice. I love this color on iPhones. I don't know about you, but I really love this one. All right, so The final thing that we want to do for our search experience is we want to add a status bar. And it's going to be a bit more, by the way, than a status bar. But basically right now, you have a bunch of refinements applied, but maybe you're on a smaller screen, like something like that, and you don't see them all. So you want to have kind of a summary of all the refinements that are applied, a centralized place where you can remove them. So we are going to add a status bar right at the top of the screen. Okay, so let's do that. We're gonna close this. We're gonna add it here. Let's add the status bar. All right, so right now it's gonna be a simple bar that doesn't do much. And we're gonna show the current refinements. So the current refinements is going to use a widget from InstantSearch called current refinements. Right, and so right now, let's comment that for a minute, because this is not the most important thing. Right now, so I have my current refinements, I have my class names again, and you can see that if I filter on Apple, I can see my Apple here. If I filter on simple, I can see Apple simple, and silver, I have that thing. So it works, but it's just ugly. It's ugly because it's using the raw attributes from my dataset, brand underscore label, and here this result. So we're going to create a mapping in the front end to say, oh, when it's brand label, it's that. When it's a color, you change it that way, right? And then we're going to use the transform items API on the widget to make sure that it's displayed the way we want, right? So let's add the mapping. We can do that outside of the component. All right, so that's a simple object. And when we say brand label is actually brand, color hex is actually color, etc. And now you can use this thing that I commented earlier to transform the items, right? So here we are transforming the items. For the label, we're using the mapping. When it's a color, we are extracting the color facet the same way as we did for the refinement list. So now it displays really nicely. And so if I remove them, it's exactly as if I was doing it directly here, right? So you see that it reacts here, it reacts here. That's pretty nice. When there are no refinements, it looks a bit weird to have active filters like that. So you want to say that there are no active filters. So it's really explicit. Again, from a UX perspective, that's much better to be explicit rather than implicit. So let's create a simple no filters component based on React InstantSearch Hooks, like the hooks from React InstantSearch Hooks. That's also very hard to say. React InstantSearch Hooks, React InstantSearch Hooks, React InstantSearch Hooks. Okay, maybe Beetlejuice, which will show up at some point. All right, so no filters. So I have my component, and it uses the use current refinements, which is the counterpart, like the hook counterpart to the current refinements widget. And I have access to can refine that tells me basically whether I can refine or not. So if there are some refinements active or not. So now I can use this component higher up. Where were we? I can use it here. Let's go here. And now I can see no active filters. And if I click here, it goes away. All right, so that's nice. Last thing that I want to do, I don't know if you saw, but when you're on Amazon, let's go here. I want to see iPhone. If you have better ideas of query, say that to me. So here you can sort by many things, but you can sort by featured. Featured is what is the best thing, it's the most relevant, but you can also say low to high or high to low in terms of price. And that's nice because sometimes you know that you want a phone, but maybe you want to see the cheapest phones first. So with Algolia, Algolia has like the ranking of Algolia is going to be based on relevance, but by default, the ranking is static on your index. You cannot change it at runtime. And so to have this way of re-ranking based on a price or anything else, like, I don't know, maybe number of likes or anything that you can think of, like a metric that would be nice featured, you can create replicas. Replicas are going to be basically replicas of your index that are going to be a clone. So the content is going to be the same. Every time that you update the content in your primary index is going to be replicated in your replica, but the settings are going to be different. So you're going to be able to say, this replica has the sort by option set on price. And so this way, you can create this little widget that you see here, the same as this one, basically this one. And what it's going to do is basically switch the index that you're using. So it looks like it's re-ranking, but it's actually just switching. That's clever. So let's do this right now. All right. So we're using the sort by widget from React InstantSearch Hooks. We're passing class names again, but mostly we're passing items, a label, and a value. The value is the name of the index that you want to use. So by default, this is our products index, but we're also passing this price ask index. You remember this was what we created in the constants initially, right? And so now I can sort by price low to high or high to low. And that's pretty nice. So here you have a really full featured search page. You have everything that you can see on big sites like Amazon, on big sites like, I don't know, whatever big site that you look up to for their search experience in e-commerce. You can have that with Algolia in basically 30 minutes if you have Raycast, right? Or if you have the Algolia documentation handy. So yeah, again, check the Algolia documentation. You have the entire API reference for all the widgets, and look at this list of widgets. We have a bunch of them. They all have a hook counterpart, so you can really customize them the way you want. Of course, we recommend to use the widgets and customize them with class names if you can, because obviously you don't have to recreate like the render part. But if you want to do something really different with the same functionality, the same APIs, you can do that with hooks. All right, fantastic. I think we have 30 minutes left, so that's cool. We're going to be able to move on to something else. But before that, Daya, do we have any questions, anything outstanding from the chat, anything that you would like to share?
Again, not a lot, but there was an interesting question from Abraham regarding the fact that currently autocomplete is not a native React component. And Alex already answered this by stating that this is something that we have discussed, but we don't have a timeline for now. So what's your input on that right now?
On when are we going to have this?
Should we, and when we, if we do?
So obviously we should, and what we want is really for you to don't have, like, we don't want you to have to think about that. Like, that's our goal, that's our North Star. That's why we're here. We're here to make sure that you don't have to think about search, you don't have to think about React, you don't have to think about all that. We want you to think about how can you create the best experience, and we want to give you all the things that we can. Obviously, that's our goal. It takes time and steps to go there, but we are on the right track. We understand a lot better what people need, what people want, thanks to all the feedback, the great feedback from our customers, our users that we get on GitHub. So we understand a lot more things, a lot better. Take into account that React 18 was just out, and there are a bunch of things that changed, so a lot more complexity. That's not an excuse, but again, just to give you an idea of why it may take a little bit more time. But obviously, our goal in general, not just for autocomplete, is to make sure that whatever you're using, it's going to be the simplest experience for you, and you don't have to mess up with any connection. You don't have to write any glue code. We want your final code to look great. I hope this answers the question. Cool. Is there any other questions, anything before we move on to recommend?
I think we can move on.
All right, let's move on. So right now we've been talking a lot about search, right? Search, autocomplete, search page. It's great. Like, search is that's the DNA of Algolia. But Algolia is not just a search company. Algolia is about search and discovery. It's about surfacing the right content. You have a lot of content, and what Daya likes is not the same thing that I like. What I search for is not the same. And yeah, so you want to show the right content in front of the right people. Search is one way to do that, but also, and that's a really important component of Algolia, you have the discovery part. And one way that I really like to have discovery is to be presented with things that I might like. Could be things that go well together, things that people in general on this store like, you know, and this is where Algolia Recommend comes into play. Let's go back on the final demo just to see what it looks like. When you go on the page, you have this really nice looking trending products carousel. And those are based on your data in Algolia. You don't have to set up anything else like any other index or anything. This is based on what you have in Algolia. So basically, what you're going to be able to do when you set up your code base is whenever someone views an item, converts, like they buy something, you're going to be able to send events to Algolia to say, oh, there was a conversion on this thing. Someone viewed this, and this is going to be automatic for you. But basically, you're going to be able to send events to Algolia to tell it, hey, this product is doing great. Many people are watching this thing, are clicking on this thing, are buying this thing. And this way, Algolia Recommend is going to learn about what are the products that are currently trending in your data set. And this way, you can show to your users right away from the homepage or a landing page the products that are trending and that they might be interested in. Let's do that together with Algolia Recommend. So we're going to open the index page. So many index in that code base. All right, so let's do this. We're going to close this just to show you what code corresponds to what. So this is this project here. So we have this here. We have the hero, and we are going to add our trending items in here. But before we do that, we have to instantiate the recommend client, the same way that we did for the search client, but now with recommend. So let's open this recommend client file, and we're going to generate the client. And this is how you do it. So you get recommend from at Algolia/recommend. You get your app ID and search API key. They are the same, right? So you can set the ACL on the search API key so it has access to recommend. So you can reuse the same if you want. And then you instantiate the recommend client. Now that we have it, we can add the trending items component in our homepage. So trending items is one of the models of Algolia Recommend that you can use to show the items from your data set that are currently trending. The name speaks for itself. All right, so let's do it. All right, so now we have trending items, and you can see it here. It looks ugly as hell, but it works. That's a common theme here. So the component is pretty simple. You have the recommend client that we're passing, the index name, how many max recommendations we want to show. We have the item component, which is basically the same thing as the hit component. Right now, we're just stringifying the item right here. So that's why it looks like that. We're also passing a view. So the view, right now, it's called a horizontal slider. This is a component from Algolia UI components, right? Allowing you to basically have something that slides like this, pretty nice. All right. And we have a header component, which allows us to display something at the top like this. So the title, the browse button. And the reason why we put it here and not outside is because this way it's going to show exactly at the same time as the content when it loads. So you don't have just the title and then you're waiting for something. Okay, it doesn't look really great. So we're going to create a trending item to replace that this component, this view. So we can do this. And basically, you will have the same thing as you have in the hit component. You have a function, which is actually a component. You have a component that takes an object containing an item, and then you can create the DOM for it. So you can display an image with Next.js. You can display a link with the title. You can put a link around it. You can format the price, stuff like that. And now, instead of this here, let's remove that. We're going to pass our trending item. And that looks a lot better, right? And see, you have those nice little handles on the side that comes from the horizontal slider. So that's pretty cool. So here, you know what? We thought we would need a lot more time to do this demo. I'm not going to lie. But we actually finished a full search and discovery experience using Autocomplete, React InstantSearch Hooks, and Algolia Recommend with the Recommend React library in an hour. And of course, we had a bunch of snippets, not going to lie again. But, you know, we created all that in, yeah, basically an hour. You have something that fully works, is production ready, that you can, yeah, we could just, you know, go there. You can see it works. It works. It just works. So again, just to remind you, Autocomplete is the library that we used for the Autocomplete experience. We use the Autocomplete JS version. This is a vanilla JavaScript, so it works with vanilla JavaScript. Dayan is going to use it after this presentation in his vanilla JavaScript presentation. But this one works with VDOM, so it's really easy to bind it with React. You don't have to use the core library. You can just use Autocomplete JS. We used it with the recent searches plugin and the query suggestions plugin. And there are many things that we did not show you for the sake of time. But again, this all works really well with React. Next up, you have React InstantSearch Hooks, which is the React version of our InstantSearch.js library. It has hooks and it has widgets, a bunch of them. You can see you can do so many different things. You can, yeah, so many things like query rules, stats powered by breadcrumb, anything you can think of. And finally, we used Recommend. Recommend is one of the latest additions to the Algolia family, and we use the Recommend React library. And see, there are so many other exciting models. We use trending items to show products that are trending, but you could use trending facets to show the categories that are currently trending, like, I don't know, phones or high tech or things like that. But also, if you have a product detail page, a PDP, you could show related products or frequently bought together products. See, if you go on Amazon again, I swear I have other examples than iPhone, but let's go on iPhone. If I check something here, at the bottom of the page, it will tell me buy it with, things that usually people buy it with. And so this is going to be really interesting to have that on your PDP. You can get that with frequently bought together. Related products is going to be what you use to do something like, so this is a comparison, but to show products. So we don't have it here on Amazon, but to show products that may be related. So for example, maybe you have a jacket that goes with a pair of trousers. You can have that with related products. Really exciting. I love Algolia Recommend, love React InstantSearch Hooks, love Autocomplete, love Algolia. Again, thanks Backmarket. Thanks a lot, Backmarket, for the dataset. The dataset, again, is not meant to be used outside of this demo, so don't use it. We're going to change the credentials anyway, so don't even try. And so, yeah, thank you, Backmarket. You can check the Backmarket website, and they're really great View Instant Search, I believe. No, it's not even View Instant Search, but Instant Search setup. And yes, that's it for me. You can check the repo for this project if you want to see this project, the final version of this project. You can check it. So that's, I think that you can share it in the chat, but that's basically on Algolia samples, and it's storefront demo Next.js. You have access to it. You can clone it. Just replace it with your data set because this one is no longer going to work for you. But yeah, that's it for me. Maybe any questions, anything else?
We have an interesting question from Gavin. Thanks, Gavin, for this question. Can you bind create autocomplete to React InstantSearch Hooks as well if you want custom search box markup?
Create autocomplete. So create autocomplete is you're talking about use autocomplete, or is it create autocomplete?
I believe it's the create autocomplete method of autocomplete, not JS, but the renderless version maybe.
If you want to bind that to React,
Yeah.
yes, you can do that. We actually have an example of that in the autocomplete documentation, creating a custom renderer. So basically, create autocomplete and autocomplete core is fully renderless. It's going to give you access to the APIs of autocomplete, so the items, everything is going to react the way you want if you use the right methods, but you build the entire markup. If you want to use that with React, you can do that. I would not recommend it though, because there are a lot of things that you will have to redo yourself, and it already works with Autocomplete.js. So you will create work for yourself that you don't have to. I would recommend creating a custom renderer, for example, if you want to use it with, I would say, React Native, maybe. That would be a good use case, because that would not be DOM related. If you want to use it with another framework, right, that is not VDOM, for example, then I would recommend using autocomplete core. If you want to use autocomplete with something that is VDOM based, so either vanilla JavaScript if you have React installed, React, Vue, then I would highly recommend to go with Autocomplete.js. But the short answer is yes, you can use it with React if you really want to control everything and put all that in React and don't create a binding like that. Yes, go for Autocomplete core. Any other question?
I think that's it.
All right, cool. So I think we can leave it here. It was Sarah. I will just stop the screen sharing. So it was Sarah, Dayan from Algolia front-end team. And we're going to take a break, which is going to be a little longer. So get some refreshments, get some snacks. And Daya will be here in basically 20 minutes-ish for the vanilla JavaScript version of this demo. Stay tuned and yeah, have a great day.